Hey, how's it going? Excuse me. Take a drink. So it's now Monday, like 6 a.m. or something, and I actually woke up at 3. And I'm saying that because I like to do a little something on Sundays, but I just couldn't get it together. But I had a card that I pulled from the Declarations of Mary. I keep calling her Magdalene Mary, like I'm reading from some kind of clipboard. I pulled one card from the Declarations of Mary Magdalene. Anyway, it is the number 20 card. And it reads, "Love, wisdom, and power is the song of God within thy sacred heart. When one recognizes their power is the power of love, in truth, grace, and inner wisdom." So, as always, these are like the cards that you sit there and think about, or I do. And this is the weekend of very large No Kings protests, not just in the United States, but across the world. That mantle has been picked up because there are similar things happening in each country. And that's because the leaders get together and decide how they're going to collectively be crappy to the people that they, so-called run their countries for. It's funny how soon they forget that they don't get to where they are without the support of the people, the support and love of the people. Like, they have to court us and present us with, like, a figurative dowry in a way. But, like everything else, that is a two-way street. Any relationship is a two-way street. And the relationship that citizens of countries seem to be having with multiple countries, with citizens having problems with the performance of their leaders. It's a title shift that's happening. It's a big deal. It's a big fucking deal. But I am always reminded of, a couple of things. I was going to say, I'm always reminded of the fact that when it comes to love and expressing it, we are, like, not good at it, or, like, we do it in a compromised, like injured way, like, we don't know how to do it wholly, with our entire true being, because that is scary. So the other thing is I always remember Martin Luther King, amongst other people, saying that love is the answer to it all, because underlying everything at our core, our basic essence, is that we just have, these lives here that we build over on top of so many times, like true archaeology in the real world. To find old stuff, we have to dig it. We have to dig. Like, every time it's got to be unearthed. Have you noticed that? Why is everything buried? Well, that, in my opinion, this is kind of off the subject, or maybe it isn't, but the reason why stuff has to be dug up, and the reason why it was buried, is because floods, like biblical floods. I am having an interesting experience on Blue Sky right now, I have a pretty fair number of atheists started following me. It's because they can all see what each other is looking at, and so they've decided have taken a liking to me, which is fine. I don't have any problems with that. And one of them is very prolific and very much dedicated to informing people to what he sees as what's wrong. Like, atheists don't believe in a God. Like, and by association, that would be like everything associated with that God, I'm pretty sure. I mean, why do it half-assed? So, that, I just complimented that guy, because even though I don't agree, like, I do think there is a God or a source or spirit or creator or whatever you want to call the Grand Poobah. I don't think spirit cares what you call it as long as you observe it and call it. Remember that it is there, and it's really not to be taken for granted, because when you stop paying attention to the main thing that spirit cares about is like loving your neighbor, basically. We kind of do everything we can, and it's part of our spiritual evolution, but we kind of do everything we can to put barriers and veils between us and that love and that knowledge of spirit that comes along with it, because it's not just knowledge, it's like a melding, a blending back, by the way, because each of us is an aspect of spirit, an incarnation of the Creator. And so I haven't in a long time tried to talk to an atheist about their atheism. Like, I don't want to do that any more than I want to try to talk to a flat earther. But like, I don't want to try and tell somebody that what they believe is wrong. That's not my place. They could very well say the same to me. As far as the atheists are concerned, though, I was kind of with them for a while, but I just couldn't go with the there is no God thing, because there's too much evidence of stuff being there, and then not enough evidence of how nothing made it happen. Like, I don't know, like, I need, like, a logical conclusion from connection to connection. And so that whole little conversation I just had, no, not the whole one, like, just the back end, the last part, is like, I feel, an unconscious illustration of just the way we put barriers between ourselves and that love that is what emanates from spirit, which creates everything that exists. It's just a circle of self-fulfilling feedback. And there's a lot of power to it once we begin to understand it and how it works and how we work within it. So it's just like funny to me the way that we are with love, and we get confused that it's all love is romantic love or like familial parental love, and we make it like it's got to be this way, like there's rules, and maybe for you personally, but generally, live and let live, I think, is the rule that should work. But there's a reason why the barriers came up, and the disagreements and the misunderstandings, so we could work our way out of them. And one of the best tools for doing that is love, because it allows you to have forgiveness, which is also major. Like, those two things right there are so powerful when it comes to us in general, when it comes to when it comes to we humans, uh, we earth beings, how about that? So, love, wisdom, and power is the song of God within thy sacred heart. When one recognizes their power is the power of love, in truth, grace, and inner wisdom. I just posted on Blue Sky about how I've been thinking that social media is a way for us to work through some of these barriers, because with our ability to shape our feeds, like what we see coming across our feed, is something we can't really do in real life. And if you don't understand what I mean by that, it is the same thing as what you would do online that you wouldn't do in reality. So there is something happens when we get on there where we lose our sense of connection to actual reality. Like we think we can get on there and say and do things we wouldn't do face to face to people. Like we wouldn't confront people, most of us, the same way that it happens online. And and I thought, and have been thinking, it is situations like that, like little interactions like that, that come up, and we have a number of choices in our ways that we respond. And so it could be just having like the wisdom to know that, like what I just said, like it's kind of like a situation you walk into, and you know there's going to be maybe like a disagreement or some sort of conflict. But knowing that is a way of consciously having your hands on the wheel in the situation, like knowing your destination. But we can also find ourselves in the same situation and not have the same type of awareness to the fact that, oh, wait a second, what I do here can make the situation happen a certain way, like one way or another, and that or another depends on how you decide to respond. And you have a lot of choices. I don't think I need to explain that particular detail. Like, you have had situations where maybe you're in a certain state of mind and you walk into a room or a business, and what's happening in there changes the face of how you are feeling. And it requires you to respond differently, perhaps. Like defensively, maybe. Which means that you put something between your true self and that person for protection. Like you don't want whatever they're doing that can be hurtful and harmful to your well-being and your self-worth even, because if you get wounded, you can start believing what the wound is telling you, and it's not necessarily the truth because it's what someone else poked you with. So you have online, on social media, these opportunities to live through these sort of mini scenarios. And it's funny because we take those things like so to heart and make them so big and important and blow them out of proportion when you resolve it. It usually boils down to something small and simple, but like I said, it just gets blown out of proportion. Why? Well, I can't show people that I feel this way because I don't want them to see me looking some kind of way. And that's in our heads, and it's not even necessarily like the reality outside of our heads. Like, we think people are looking and thinking things, and a lot of times people are not looking or thinking anything that we think. So that's something we kind of have to get a handle on. And other things like that are what we have the opportunity to fine-tune with social media. And that's, I just sort of condensed that thought and shared it with someone on Blue Sky this morning, or those thoughts I should say, because I wrote a little paragraph, or not so little, I should say, talking about these things I'm talking about right now. And so, I mean, I just feel like we talk a lot about how horrible social media is and how bad the people are and the stuff people talk about. And then we get up in arms or we get hurt, and so then we feel like we have to retaliate, which is not what this is talking about. But that is hard, and that happens anyway. Like, you still have to endure it because not everyone is on the same page with how they feel about social media and being on it and the interactions and what they themselves bring. Like, all of these things are considerations, and they always are, but on social media, it's like we have an opportunity to shrink them down to something that we can place in front of us on a table and examine and turn around, and by which I mean try different ways of interacting with each other, try different ways of ourselves choosing the ways that we're interacting with each other. Like, all of these options are there always in life, but in real life, you know what you don't have? You don't have block and unfollow. You don't have a way to delete someone out of your life that is not physically harmful the way it would be in real life. You can't, because you can't just eliminate whole people without consequences. Like, you can't blow up boats that you are saying something that you want to be true about the people on that boat, which is not the case, and then innocent people get messed up because you want to think this. It is literally kind of the same sort of interface. However, on social media, nobody is, like, actually losing their life. You may feel like you've been killed to death, but that passes like a storm cloud, and it's online. And it can definitely be dangerous, but that's not really the fault of social media. That's more our fault, because we can take whatever feelings we have gathered up, if we're doing this like in a kind of not great way. Like, I don't suggest you doing this, but at least on social media, you can, like, use your words to wound someone. And also, you can give you practice on responding or even reacting not physically, so that you are forced to use your words. But that's better, because when you don't use your words, it's like giving primitive people a weapon that the rest of the primitive people don't have. And that just starts a war of, well, I gotta come up with something as big and bad or worse, which is what reality was when it comes to the history of weapons and humans. So it can get out of hand in real life, and it can jump out of social media into real life and turn into those kind of really negative situations that we actually probably don't really want. Like, we get mad and we don't think straight through to the conclusion of what our words could lead to. And in real life, that can be physically dangerous, like literally or legally dangerous. Online, you have fewer of those sort of constraints, but you still have the sort of basic guidelines for behavior. Like, people go online and act like they don't act in real life, like they do things they wouldn't do in real life. And I don't go on there that way. Like, I go on there with the state of mind, like, this is just like real life. And so I'm going to act accordingly. And so I'm not going to do something that I wouldn't do in real life either. Like, just because I am, not zeros and ones on this side of the screen doesn't mean that if I get upset with someone, I need to pick up a bat and actually hit them with it. I can just use my words. I can still just use my words. And I feel like social media has, whether we like it or not, turned out to be a place where we can spit out all of that gall and learn to, like, kind of keep it to that level and area rather than jumping out to this side of the screen and doing something stupid to people. So, maybe, or not maybe now, I think it's totally the case, all of the stuff that we put between ourselves and each other, mainly because we're hurt or fearful that we're going to get hurt, like our love is going to get something on it that's going to hurt, like a injection, and we're a 4-year-old, it's like, we can handle it, though. And we need to learn, and I think we do online. And I hope, and on some level, that it translates to going offline and understanding that connections cannot be made in the same way offline as they can online, and vice versa. And it's up to us to pick which ones are, like, the least detrimental to each other, to ourselves, and I think that's what life is it's just a series of experiences, and we help each other in those just by being here for it, for, like, the person that saves you, the person that you argue with, the person that comes up with the solution when you can't, the person that has the food when you don't, that shares, or that doesn't. Because we think that bad experiences are of no value or something, and it's like, we know that's not true, because down the line we can remember a bad experience, and something we remember from it that was terrible at the time is not terrible now and is useful to us. And so we don't have to wait for time to pass. Like, we could just keep making those decisions and get there faster, and maybe even skip a lot of the whole process if we get practiced at that. And what, in a far less complicated way, obviously, because of character limits, I said basically the same thing, that it is our opportunity to test and practice these, oh God, I don't even know what to call them, interacting with each other, and for the better, if possible. However, if it's a situation that we deem as negative or bad or unpleasant, and we can't wait for it to be over, and oh my God, the horror and the humanity. But the thing is even the worst, like, seems like stuff happens and is resolved a lot faster now than it was when I was a kid, when it comes to, like, foreign conflicts, or, well, I'll just leave it at that. But just as an example, we have learned and evolved to even do that differently, to like, be at war. And it took practice, and in each of the situations we ever encounter, there is always a level of a handshake and an agreement and understanding that, let's take an argument, for instance. You're having a discussion, and emotions heat up, and it becomes an argument, and one person wants to be right over the other person, and each one is trying to prove it. We all know what an argument looks like, but my point is that even in the midst of that, it is possible to see something worthwhile, to make the experience that feels bad, make you see that the experience that makes you feel bad is a worthwhile one, because something will happen there that wouldn't happen when it's just happy and nice and everybody getting along. And that is just another thing to work through, which is a learning experience for us. And the working through gets us closer to the love and the wisdom that is the God within us, the Creator within us. Like, we are literally creating our lives in the way that I just said, for example. But like any interaction, apply that knowledge to it, and it changes the whole landscape, kind of. So, this card at one point talks about recognizing the power of love. And recognition right now for me of the power of love is that even when we're clashing with each other, it's not a useless exercise. It's not a waste of time. No interactions with each other are wastes of time. But to see it that way, you have to like live a little. You have to go through some things, because some things don't make sense until you do, and you don't accept them as such until you do. You need to gain wisdom and knowledge and experience, and that's what we do and have each other for. And even though I have very recently felt attacked, it's like, maybe that's what it felt like, but maybe that's not what it was, because it has also been a time for me of discovering that long-held beliefs that I thought were just, evergreen, couldn't get it wrong, like it was just forever. Nope, it was just completely wrong the whole time. And then you get to think about why that it was and who did it to you, and say thank you, because the whole trip somebody put you on or put you through, they're not doing it at you or against you, even though that may be the way it looks and sounds. In truth, we're giving each other something to work through, and the working through and the giving to each other to be able to do that, that's love. That's a big deal. That's life. Okay, guess I told you. That's this card. Thank you and good night.